everybody. Welcome to the future of attention. Today we're going to talk about a central tension. Our attention is both scattered and chunked into shorter and shorter formats. But at the same time, we seem to have nearly limitless attention for the things we want to be attentive to. Now, I've done dozens of these webinars, and you've heard me talk about the future of a lot of things. I'm not prone to hyperbole, nor overly apocalyptic, and I didn't use the word hellscape in an issue until we did an issue on the future of shopping. I've never said that X will kill Y. But this topic, attention, might just change that. Now that I have your attention, I'm Matt Carmichael, editor of What the Future and your host today. Longtime WF fans will notice some changes here. This is not my attic. This is not the recording studio I'm usually in. We are on location filming from Austin at the 40th South by Southwest. And I say we because there's a film crew here, and we also have live guests. So I'm going to talk about the attention issue and our exclusive new research a little bit, and then I'm going to sit down with my new friends, Matt Klein, the editor of Zine, and Cheryl Hauser, the founder of Creative Breed. And we're going to have a live conversation about all of this. We hope you dig the new format, and please let us know what you think in the comments or email. Now, whatever your thing, cats, cooking, Minecraft speedruns, we will consume limitless content about our favorite topics. And AI is here to help with all of that, quickly and tirelessly generating content as fast as data centers can get built, lakes drained, and electricity generated. I kid, kinda. But younger adults especially want to connect and give their attention and build community around these increasingly niche fan communities. In the issue, we talked to Kyle Watson, the chief brand officer for the energy drink Celsius. And she said, what I see as important is brands creating their own ecosystems and connecting the dots between these communities, but also establishing those people in those communities that are going to be the brand's voice because they're so authentically connected to those humans. But also at the same time, there's a backlash in the form of a cottage industry focused on focus. Everything from notebooks and energy drinks to wellness retreats where you can unplug and be mindful and center yourself. Here's the story in this issue. Everything and everyone is vying for your attention and your data, which has been deemed the most prized commodity by marketers and policymakers and platforms alike. Attention is essentially just a fancy way of saying time. You have a finite amount of it, and marketers want to grab it. And let's be honest, they're doing that to sell you things. AI is just getting started, and already we are bombarded by information. We don't know what to trust other than ourselves, what we see with our own eyes and hear with our own ears. And one of the only lines in this chart that's gone up since 2020, messaging from brands, who've leaned into values alignment and authenticity this decade. Attention to news and information, not entertainment, is an especially important focus. There are so many ways for us to get news, but the ones we tend to turn to, social media for instance, aren't the ones we trust. And there's a notable increase since 2020 of people saying that journalism can take a side as long as it's rooted in good reporting. That's it, that's the job. But reporters have also been taught for decades that conflict is the way to get attention, maybe even the key way. In this issue, we talked to Amanda Ripley, a journalist and author of a book called High Conflict. She teaches journalists how to reduce the conflict in their reporting while still telling good stories. That conflict gains attention but erodes trust and makes communication and cooperation difficult. While AI is going to cause a lot of problems for us with disinformation and such, she sees a big positive from AI. She told me, quote, AI is shockingly good at coaching humans to be better communicators in conflict. If we start from the premise that most of us are not well skilled in intelligent, healthy, smart conflict skills, we never get that training. We don't see it modeled in our politics or our culture, right, she said? To thrive in the modern age, you're going to have to get much better at it much more quickly, and that's the only hope we've got. And we have found AI tools to be very, very good at helping humans, for example, get better at listening, she said. Now at the outset, I hinted at a death. Is there a world where AI kills email marketing? AI tools are already at a point where they can generate endless, seemingly personalized content tailored just for you. That's going to be happening at scale any moment now. Your email software, meanwhile, is going to be better at figuring out what comms are worthy of your attention and keeping the rest from you. So there's a plausible future where the only way to break through and get people's attention, or at least show up in their daily AI summary, is by having something unique, owned, and something the LLMs won't find on the internet. One solution? Trustworthy data and research. Tell your customers something they don't know about something they care about, and you'll get their attention. You can check out the full attention issue at future.ipsos.com for more data and conversations. But speaking of conversations, it's time for me to join Matt and Cheryl and talk through all of this. Let's dive in. So hey, now we're going to talk to our panel, and we have actual humans here. It's not just me playing audio clips of our guests that we had interviewed previously. So I'm really excited, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Matt, you'll start?
Hey there, my name is Matt Klein. I call myself a cultural theorist and a media strategist, essentially trying to understand what is our relationship to media and technology, and how do we help organizations show up in culture in a more strategic, resonant, and pro-human manner.
And Cheryl.
I'm Cheryl Miller-Hauser. I am a documentary filmmaker, a keynote speaker, and a narrative coach. I work with brands and leaders and help them show up as more human and relatable in the stories they tell. As a filmmaker, I work with brands on commercials, web series, branded documentaries, launch videos, anything featuring real people that creates an emotional connection and gets to the heart of what makes us human.
And it's a great kind of theme to start with, right? So we are at South by Southwest, and we are taking in all the things, and I'm sure you've been hitting some sessions as well as you've got your own talks coming up, or you have already given yours. What are some of the things that have been getting your attention at South by?
Well, I loved Matt's session, and what I love most about South by is the serendipity here, the coming together of people from all different disciplines, the divergent thinking, the open-mindedness that people are here to learn from each other and to share, and that's what I love most about South by.
Yeah.
I love the globalization of the South by brand and who's now attending. And it really feels like, in the most cliche manner, a melting pot of so many different perspectives, not just in regards to all the topics that South by covers, but all the countries that are now represented as well. So the people watching, if you will, more than anything is fascinating.
Yeah. And one of the big themes is like being together is, I think, the theme for this year, something along those lines. And so the idea of talking about humans in all of this, especially as we are surrounded by all the context of technology and AI, and every panel has had the same 3 AI slides in it. But it's good to keep bringing that back, and I think that's the theme we will get into a little bit today. But what are some of the brands do you think are, like, what are some of the ways that they are cutting through all of the noise and all of the signals around us to actually get our attentions? You want to start, Cheryl?
Sure. I think that brands have to speak to our emotional needs, not our functional needs. We see a trend of people moving away from broadcast social media into private, instant direct messaging is now the most popular form of people on their devices, people moving into private groups. So brands can't buy attention or influence anymore. They can't buy access like they used to be able to. So they have to move people and then have people within communities or have people direct message something to their friends and family. And that's how a brand will get attention and connection. That's always been the case. Brands have had to move people emotionally to connect, but now more than ever, when they cannot buy influence, they have to be getting into people's hearts and souls and then having people share within the communities they are or within their direct messages. And people only share things that move them and that say something about them. So
I think we're so used to, as marketers, whipping out the megaphone, and we have relied upon this idea of spectacle as a form of garnering attention. And as you mentioned, those channels are changing. The ways in which we interact with one another are changing, and therefore the ways in which we interact with brands are changing. The problem, though, is that when brands rely upon that megaphone model and come in and say, look at me, look at me, look at me, but doing so in a more intimate environment, that doesn't really work out. So I think the ways in which we think about it now is how do you show up in such a way where it's matching the intimacy or perhaps the vulnerability or the messiness or the nuance that people are essentially leaning into in these different spaces. And again, I think for a brand that's so used to being loud, that's really hard. We're so used to saying, look at me, or look at me, look at me, look at me, versus I see you. And I think the difference between those two is the complete difference of what success is today in a media environment.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways and communities and fandoms where those kind of interactions are taking place, and the brands are trying to be authentic and reach out to the people who are authentic in those communities, and the communities themselves can kind of tell when that's working and when it's not. And I gotta say, I don't envy marketers at the moment. Like, it is not an easy job. Like, we think back to Mad Men era, and it's like, oh, my decision is going to be which of the 3 networks do I put my spot on, and how many times do I run it? And it's like, oh, it should have been that easy. You can see why they had time to like take long naps on their couches in the middle of the day and have 17 cocktail lunches. Like,
I mean, it's a mess right now. The shifts that I'm seeing, one, it's a very no or low trust environment. So the percentage of those who are looking at institutions as trustworthy messengers is declining. We're in an age of lost nuance, where it's harder to see nuance than before, and culture is inherently messy and subjective in nuance, so it's harder to land in that place. I think we're also in a moment of pre-rationalizing, which is we can't make any decision without 1,000 data points or 1,000 slides to justify why we should do the thing. But we could also pre-rationalize in such a way where we are making really anti-human decisions. So I think the antidote to that is post-rationalizing. There are far more good ideas we could post-rationalize than we could pre-rationalize. So why we're making pre-rationalizing a prerequisite for making any decision. And the brands that we see that are post-rationalizing, like a Hot Ones, for example, like Hot Ones on paper doesn't make any sense. That's a post-rationalized idea. So when we think about attention as well, how can we get more comfortable with discomfort and not knowing how something is going to perform, and value the human in that as well? And I think when we do that, we see some brilliant ideas that really resonate in culture.
I don't think any great ideas come out of the rational brain. Yeah. They often start with something we feel. And as a storyteller, I mean, Robert Frost, the poet, says, no tears on the page, no tears from the reader. I mean, the greatest stories are the more connected the storyteller is, and that can be a brand or a leader, the more they are going to be able to connect with an audience. I mean, we look at Dove, one of, an extraordinary brand, and their Real Beauty, which started in 2002 and has transformed that brand, turned it into a hugely profitable brand and also huge cultural force. It started because there was a group of women who worked there, and they were looking at ads from their competitors, and one of them spoke up, and from her gut feeling, these ads make me feel really bad about myself. And then those women took a year to study the rational thinking of what is culture doing to women around the world. They're making culture is making women feel bad about themselves. And then they had to convince their male colleagues of this, who rationally were saying, we don't believe this. And so the women got the wives and daughters of those male executives to send in video talking about how ads were making them feel bad about themselves. And that's why they launched Real Beauty. And they were the first brand to come out and talk about women and make them feel seen and heard and understood and validated. We love you. You are beautiful just the way you are. We love you just the way you are. And that's what's transformed the brand, who used to, before that, talk about functionality of the product. And so when brands talk about the functional needs that the product meets, it's appealing to our rational brain. And people don't make decisions, including buying decisions, including B2B and B2C, based on rational thinking. We make decisions, including purchasing decisions, primarily based on emotion, and we rationalize the decision afterwards with our, rational thinking. But, what you were saying before about making people feel seen and heard, I mean, every brand needs to do what Dove did 20 years ago and understand how people are feeling, what is their true experience, not some aspirational experience, and then like validate, we see you, we understand you, and we're here to meet your emotional needs, not just your functional needs.
Yeah, and I think that's been kind of a recurring theme we've been hearing lately, is that like AI is getting more personal, but we also need to keep the human connection and keep the humans involved in the things, and that empathy is kind of a superpower, right? That being able to have that kind of meaningful connection with the people you're trying to reach. And I think back when we were kind of chatting earlier, Matt, you had this great metaphor about like the dinner table.
Mm-hmm. The way in which I think of culture right now is we are at a dinner party. And as I mentioned before, these brands are coming into the dinner party with these megaphones to say, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's one way to guarantee that you're not getting invited back to that dinner party. But if you show up, firstly, doing your homework before, who's going to be there, what's the vibe, what are people wearing, perhaps it's maybe not a dinner party for you. You bring something of value, so like a bottle of red, but in the brand world, that could be access, entertainment, value. You are giving more than you take, and you're also asking questions. You make other people feel special. You allow other people to ask you questions. You have interesting stories to tell. If you don't have an interesting story, perhaps that's a signal that you go out and do something interesting in culture, so you have a story worth telling. And you also know that this isn't your home. If you go into a community, you don't own it. You don't get to put your feet up on the couch. So when a brand shows up that way, an organization shows up in culture that way, they get invited time and time and time again, back and back and back. Again, the problem is we're using these old playbooks where we come in hot and we try to hijack the trend or hijack the meme or whatever it may be and say, what about me? Can I be at this party too? And they're like, why doesn't anyone like me? It's like, because you're a really bad dinner party guest.
Yeah. And I really like the idea of being intentional about doing the thing so that you can then go talk about it and be part of it. And I think that's a really good message for us to be thinking about.
I think so many organizations are trying to contort and twist and posture just to get in. And once they're there, they don't know what to do. So I think when you have that conviction and you have that wherewithal of, why are we even showing up to this dinner party? Are we making people feel special? Are we bringing something of value? When you start from that place, then it's easier. If you want a good image, you start with a good reality. But we're so busy trying to contort and reframe after the fact that we're missing the opportunity to show up and have a good reality in the first place.
I think, I love that analogy, and I think brands have to behave like humans. And who are the humans we are most attracted to? They're people who make us feel seen and heard and special, and also, that are not perfect, not like, the brands again that are showing this aspirational look at our lives and are pushing product. We are not going to feel a connection. We're going to feel a connection to a brand that helps us feel seen in our fullness. I mean, we're not perfect. Yeah. Being human can be wondrous and beautiful and joyful, and it's also really hard and messy and painful. And so the brands that acknowledge that full spectrum of what it means to be human, we feel seen, we feel like they give us space to embrace who we are, and so we trust them and we embrace them.
Yeah, that's the inherent tension, because the brand, as we view it, must be polished and perfected and smoothed over and rounded, and that's at complete odds with how people are showing up in culture right now, which is we don't want that perfection. We don't want the smoothed over or the filter, that we're valuing the honest. The other thing that this is in tension with is this idea of scale, right? We want scale, we want scale, we want scale. You don't really scale relationships. You can't be a friend to everyone. So that comes back to the dinner party example, where we can't be at every single party all the time. And so often brands show up, they walk into the metaphorical community or dinner party, and they're already looking at their phone, looking for the next party to go to, not actually resonating with the people who are there. And people smell that, they feel that. So I think what this also means is, how do you dial up your conviction to say, these are the types of people that we want to create relationships with. And that may mean sacrifice. And I think we're having a really hard time with sacrifice right now when everything is so quick and so scalable that we kind of have to.
Well, no brand can be all things to all people. And the brands that try just fade into the sameness of everyone else trying to conform and fit in. So, a brand needs to know who it is and what it believes, and culture starts with what people believe, and is grounded in belief. So that's how you find your true believers, and that those true believers, attract other true. That's the infectious nature of culture. But also in terms of, we're talking about attention today, but it's not just to capture attention. It's attention to what end? To get people to do something, to change attitudes, to change behavior, to buy a product, to hire you as so it's not just it's the emotional connection, and because attention by itself is meaningless. And then in terms of talking about how attention spreads these days, when people see something that moves them, they share with others, they share within their community, and those people share more widely. That gets media attention, that gets discussion, and then there's this whole loop. So instead of now this megaphone of an influencer who has millions of followers, like the megaphone is not working as much. It's starting small and then spreading outwards from the individual to the community to getting the media attention.
Yeah, and as we kind of think about the future of attention, we're at such this kind of weird inflection point with a lot of things changing. We're also, as you've pointed out, like in a pretty low trust environment in terms of systems and governments, and although we are a little more trusting of brands, which is kind of interesting, that's like a place we're looking for. And I think because the future is so unpredictable at the moment, there's certainly some obvious paths it could go, but we don't know which one it's going to take, and we'll probably meander a little bit. But I think the theme that we keep hearing is that we as humans are always going to want other things that are human, and that no matter what the technology is doing around us, we're going to want to kind of keep that human connection going. And so that's always a good thing for brands to just lean into, even as everything else around you is crazy and chaotic and everybody wants your attention. And so one of the panels I was at this week said something out loud that I have thought in my head a lot, which is, can we please have another example besides Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's, please? And you've mentioned Dove, which is the other one that's always like in the conversation. And it's like, why aren't there more of those? So as you guys are thinking about brands and attention, like what brands have your attention at the moment? Who are doing this well, and who do you think is well positioned to carry this kind of human feeling forward?
I have two that come to mind. I mean, I have a lot more, but which I'll share right now. The first is Lego. I think Lego is absolutely crushing it. I look at their idea forum as an incredible case study where they essentially allow people to submit what kits they want to see built in the world. So there's reviews and ratings and judges, and perhaps one day your submitted kit can be built by Lego and sold around the world. Now, what's so brilliant about that idea is that Lego doesn't even have to make any of those kits, even though they have. It's this invitation of, pun intended, we want to build with you. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to build with you and bring you into the fold. Another example I think of is Starface, the acne pimple patch brand. If you want to resonate in culture, you have to think about what is the future that my audience wants to see, and how do I build that with them? How do I augment, fund, platform, honor, celebrate? If you think about what teenagers want, or adolescents, they don't want acne, or more precisely, they want to destigmatize acne. No one likes acne. We quite literally built a business on top of destigmatizing acne. So when we look back, we're like, why do people love the brand? It's because they're building a world that these people want to see. And they're doing it alongside them. And they're not speaking at them. They're doing something that these people really, really care about. So when we think about attention, this is not cheap attention. To your point, we're so obsessed and we hyper-optimize for the number and make the metric go big. That's cheap attention. That's empty calories. There's another sort of attention, which is resonance and depth. And I look at a Starface, like that's real attention. That is people are committed to that brand because they're building a world that these people want to see. People don't forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use Dove, they are used all the time now because of how that started. It was just from we talk about listening all the time, and often brands, it's the social listening or the data, and the listening that is most important is the listening of the heart. And when I'm a brand I'm besotted with now is a Brazilian beauty brand, O Boticário. They're actually global. They had over 6 billion in sales last year. They're still a private company. They've grown organically, started by a chemist or someone who studied, a pharmacist came out and started blending things in a blender in his shop in Brazil. They are, every Mother's Day, they do a spot. I'm going to use one of their spots in my talk this year here. They tackle issues that carry so much stigma for their customers, for women. And last year, they tackled infertility with this short 3-minute spot, and it's just like I wept. I watched it and wept. The one I'm using is a mother and a son, and looking at adolescence. They saw a Harvard study that showed that adolescence is one of the most lonely and turbulent times for mothers, but mothers don't talk about it because they're so full of guilt and shame for being rejected by their children. They've tackled the sibling tension around caring for a mother with dementia. So they're tackling with love, compassion, but also the full scope of what makes us human. And the spot I'm using, Tempesta, about the mother and son, was within 24 hours the most talked about and viewed spot that the brand had ever made. And people shared it in WhatsApp widely saying, "This is me," and got women who were ashamed to talk about this, sending to friends and family, having deep, vulnerable, open conversations about the loneliness and the shame they felt during adolescence. And this is how a company can lift a stigma, get conversation, get attention, build love and trust. I'm using a spot this year from Rougiette, a company in the erectile dysfunction space, who's using humor. And most spots in that category speak in these hushed saccharine tones or very medicalized and are perpetuating this, "You are broken, our product will fix you." And here they're reframing erectile dysfunction around confidence and resilience, and it's a locker room, the coach is talking to, play hard, stay hard, but either using humor and innuendo to capture that emotional experience, but again, lifting the stigma. I mean, is talking about things that carry a lot of shame. Yeah. And I think that this is what I mean when I talk about when a brand shows up and they see us in our fullness and say, "You are normal. What you are experiencing is normal. That's human." Then they are shifting culture, they're leading culture, and they're also making us feel seen.
So one of the things I love about What the Future is it's a magazine about the future, and we are thinking about 3 to 5 to 10 years in the future. But what always winds up happening is that we always come back to kind of these same bedrock conversations. Like, we have all of these new tools as marketers and as policymakers to reach people, to platforms to talk to them about, platforms to talk to them on, all of these different ways that our attention is being divided, all of the different ways that AI is disrupting all that. And then you get people in the room and they're like, "Oh no, dude, you still have to just be human. And you have to talk to people and you have to lean into that and empathy." And it sounds trite to just keep kind of coming back to these points, but there's a reason for that. And I think that will continue because as long as you are still marketing to the humans, and marketing to AI is a whole other thing we could talk about, you still have to be making the things that work with humans. And I know, Cheryl, you've done work around kind of the brain function about how those connections happen and how we deal with attention and all the things that are competing for it. Can you tell us a little about some of the research in that space?
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, you said it before, the technology will change. It will continue to change. Our basic human emotional needs have not changed over the millennia. they're not changing. So, well, at least so far. But in terms of brain function, what I nerd out on is our brain on stories. Like, what do stories do to our brain? And even in terms of attention, there was a study done out of Wharton that looked at 7,000 articles from the New York Times and which articles were shared more heavily or got people's attention. And again, it's the ones that activated certain emotions, but not just any emotion, emotions that combined physical and psychological response. So awe, very big one. Empathy. On the negative scale, anger, anxiety. But in terms of storytelling, if you take people on a journey, you through someone where they are identifying emotionally, not in terms of demographics, but in terms of an emotional experience, they go on the journey. It's called narrative transportation, and our brain waves even sync. And so, the most effective stories are the ones that where there's struggle and triumph, and there's somebody who has a goal, there are stakes, there are obstacles that get in the way, and they have to transform to reach their goal. And if they reach their goal, if we've gone on that journey of narrative transportation, we feel empowered to take action, like we can as well. But the stories that involve transformation and that bring us on an emotional journey are the most effective. And it also makes sense that triggering awe and empathy would activate attention and action, because awe and empathy make us feel like we belong to something bigger than ourselves, that we belong to a shared humanity. And the best stories capture that sense of shared, whether it's a movie, a brand spot, a leader giving a talk to the team, that sense of shared humanity is so key.
And I think it's interesting. One of the things we keep talking about is like these positive brand stories, but one of the people we talked to in the issue is a woman named Amanda Ripley, who wrote a book about high conflict. And a lot of her research as a journalist has been about all of the conflict and kind of how our brains process that. And it feels like that's often where a lot of people go as a shortcut to getting your attention, is to introduce more conflict. And you mentioned like you need a little bit of that in the overall arc, but if you go like straight to that, it's like it's hard to get the connection you're looking for. And one of the panels I was at, Rohit Bhargava, and he's going to be co-writing a book with Henry Cortino Mason about words that don't exist that should. And one of the ones they gave us was the algorithm, that the algorithm is optimized toward making us angry. And I think being able to kind of tell some of these stories in more human and more empathetic ways and appeal to some of our better emotions is hopefully where we're going to start going a little more.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not sure, but I think you study this, but I mean, study after study shows, right, that if when we're scrolling a lot, increased depression, increased loneliness, increased anxiety, lower cognitive function. I mean, no good things come from the,
Yeah, I think larger what we're dealing with is this idea of the tyranny of the dashboard. If we're beholden to making numbers go up, you begin to outsource decisions to anti-human behaviors. And that's where we get rage bait as the word of the year. But I think what's really happening is that we see these numbers go up when we do that type of content, whether that be organizations or whether that be individuals. It's back to that idea of cheap attention. It's cheap attention because it's making the number go up. But because we're not reflecting or taking accountability of, is this attention even worthwhile? Is this really measuring resonance? No, it's not. It's measuring eyeballs for half of a second. So when we outsource that thinking to make the number go up, that's how we get that type of content. And nothing really good comes of that type of content.
Yeah. So I want to pivot a little bit as we kind of wrap this up a little bit. But since we are talking about attention, I want to talk about attention is really, we mostly think about it as scattered, but it's also a thing that we are trying to do more and more to find ways to focus. And I think there's this kind of whole cottage industry about that, about trying to figure out how to get people to like unplug and be mindful. And so what kind of things do you do when you're trying to focus, Cheryl?
I live in New York City.
So
And
you just can't. I mean, it's just like geographically impossible.
no, I live across the street from a park and in a quiet apartment. So yeah, but I also have a place in the Hudson Valley, and I'm shocked because I was such a city person. I now just want to be in the woods with the animals and the trees. I mean, I've really. This sounds like such a cliche also, but I just like, I feel a physical shift when I'm up there. And, but also I've never been, for better or worse, I used to beat myself up for not being on Instagram. I mean, I have an account, but for not, not being there all the time, not posting all the time, I'm not someone who ever, because I couldn't. It made me anxious and empty. It made me feel empty if I spend too much time. And I'm not someone who experiences FOMO, but I like to wake up in the morning and have a cup of coffee and sit and think. Like, just take time to. I value more than anything time with loved ones, with friends, with family. I hate small talk. I want to go deep, fast, and stay deep. So I'm someone who has never been about like, I move fast and I'm across a lot. But I think that I can do that because I find I'm so grounded in so many other ways in the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's like lovely.
It's very aspirational. I'm going to give a different type of answer, or a provocative answer, related to the beating yourself up part. I think something that's really effective that we're not talking a whole lot about is a form of radical acceptance of what is in our control or not in our control. And I think we do a lot of beating ourselves up because we have bad hygiene at the moment when it comes to our technologies or our devices. And I think the problem of your anger rhythm, or whatever term you want to use, only gets exacerbated when we feel the shame of we shouldn't be doing this thing. And I think we're in an environment that oftentimes is stacked against the human. And for us to feel bad about our own habits, if I wake up and the first thing I do in bed is, look at my email, messages telling me that I'm a bad person for checking my email in bed doesn't make me feel any better as well. So I think there's a sliver of, not acceptance or acquiescence, but a form of accepting the moment that we're in, which is like, it's okay that we're all experiencing this distress and we shouldn't be even harder on ourselves because we fall trapped to bad habits. I think it's incredibly aspirational for us to, buy the dumb phone, but the truth of the matter is, every aspect of society is now connected to the internet. Your banking, your education, your healthcare. For you to be told that you're a bad person for checking your apps, there's of course balance. We need the detox, we need the grass, sure. But to say that if you're not buying a dub phone, I mean, that's unrealistic. That's not a real way of living in 2026 or even in the future, as the rest of the world gets connected to the internet. So there's something in the middle between, yes, we want to inspire and motivate and empower environments for better digital hygiene and habits, and at the same time acknowledge the current moment that we're in, which is, it's something that we're all experiencing. And can we, again, not accept that wholeheartedly, but can we accept the fact that, yeah, this sucks and is really hard, and you're not a bad person for falling trap?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you both for coming and taking part in this, our kind of first guest webinar for What the Future. I think you would both be great dinner guests, so thank you. And then I want to thank you all for your attention, for coming out and watching this with us. Stay tuned. Our next issue of What the Future is going to be about the future of success, building off of our American Dream conversation from last year. You can see it all, and all of our back issues, of course, at future.ipsos.com. And as always, I want to close by saying thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for giving yourself some space to think about the future of a thing, whether that's just watching a webinar or reading a magazine or doing, obviously, a full Trends and Foresight exercise, which we'll always recommend. But if you stop and give yourself some time to get out of your day-to-day and quarter-to-quarter and think about the future broadly, even just for a little bit of your attention, you're going to do better research and ask better questions today. So thanks very much. We will be back here in the future.